Hello, and welcome to a debate between Robert Carpenter and Bridget Fleming, the candidates running for legislator for the 2nd District of Suffolk County. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The League of Women Voters of the Hamptons, Shelter Island, and the North Fork are sponsoring this debate. I'm Kathy Peacock, and I'll be moderating the debate. The other member of the League who you see on screen is Eileen Mercer, who will be our timer. Others in the League who are instrumental in enabling this debate are Arlene Hinkemeyer, who's our publicity chairperson and served as liaison with CTV and the press, and Barbara McClancy, who is chair of the Voter Services Committee and coordinated this event. Our thanks go to all of those who contributed questions for the debate, and a very special thanks to Charles Certain of CTV, whose technical support has made it possible to hold this debate through Zoom and make it available via YouTube until the election. We also thank the candidates for agreeing to participate in a Zoom debate, and we thank you for watching. Just a word about who we are. The League of Women Voters is a political but nonpartisan national organization. While we never endorse candidates or parties, we're involved in many issues affecting our community. Foremost among our goals is to educate voters, stimulate voter interest, and encourage voter participation. We are respected for sponsoring fair and impartial candidate debates such as this one, and for the educational materials we distribute on voting issues. Now we'll move to the ground rules for the debate. Since we don't have a live audience, the questions were all submitted in advance by members of the League and other civic groups. The debate will use a traditional format. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then I'll ask a series of questions, and each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to respond to each question. In addition, each candidate will have 3 one-minute opportunities to rebut a response from the other candidate. They'll have 1 minute for a closing statement. The candidates will speak in alphabetic order, switching with each question. The close will be in reverse alphabetic order. Let's begin with the opening statements. Robert, you'll be first.
Hi, my name is Robert Carpenter. I'm running for the legislator for the 2nd District. My background is I grew up in East Quogue, born and raised, went to West Hampton Beach High School, graduated in 2001. I went off to culinary school. Actually, I went to Suffolk Community College for a little while, and then I went off to culinary school and got a degree in culinary arts. I've been working at the Stone Creek Inn for about 24 years. Now it's part-time, but now I also work for the county as well. I'm very hard driven and I do a lot. Like when I go into a project or I go into a job, I always do the best I can. I think me being a county legislator, I would be able to do the job well and immerse myself into the actual job itself. And I hope that maybe I win on election day. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Bridget? We can't hear you, Bridget, you're muted.
Sorry, can I restart my time?
Sure, Eileen, can you restart her?
Because I'm doing my own timing, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for this important forum and for all you do to protect democracy. I'm Suffolk County Legislator Bridget Fleming. I represent the 2nd Legislative District. I was first elected to the legislature in 2015, and it's been my absolute privilege to serve our beautiful communities ever since. I'm the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, the vice chair of the Public Safety, vice chair of Public Works, Transportation and Energy, and a member of the Veterans Committee, Health, and the Environment Planning and Agricultural Committee. I was a member of the Southampton Town Board for 6 years before that. So I've spent the last 10 years working hard to make life a little better for ordinary Suffolk residents. Whether it was at the height of the shutdown when my team and I pushed for enough testing, delivered PPE, and guided small business and arts institutions through rough economic waters, or fighting groundwater contamination, or facing head-on the impacts of climate change and increased flooding and coastal erosion, I've always set my sights on two goals: listening and understanding the needs of the members of our communities and working hard to achieve solutions. So I established a project to develop innovative green infrastructure solutions to flooding, extreme rain events, and storm surge. We created a transportation working group, secured millions in additional funding, and started a microtransit on-demand pilot in our push for a functioning public transportation system. I've helped shepherd budget reforms, and with the support of the American Rescue Plan, we're improving the county's finances by reducing debt, boosting reserves, and investing in workers to grow the economy without raising taxes. We've kept crime at historic lows, invested in open space in our parks, and continue to reform outdated wastewater technology to protect our bays and harbors. Newsday has called me one of the most active and effective legislators in the county. I'm honored to be with you, and I look forward to a good discussion. Thank you.
Was that your timer, Bridget?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, first question, and Bridget, you're going to answer first. COVID has affected all of us. Would you support mandated COVID shots for all Suffolk County employees? Could union employees use this as a bargaining tool, or should public health take precedence?
It's an excellent question. And I have to say, in part, it's a question that it's a solution to a problem that we on Long Island don't really have. Our municipal employees have stepped up in such a remarkable way during the pandemic that I'm loath to impose anything on them other than the full support of the legislature. These are our essential workers. So for instance, I had a public transportation memorial service that honored the 21 bus drivers who were lost during COVID and gave a moment for their families to recognize the service that they undertook to keep our economy running. So I think right now on Long Island, we have 65% or more are double vaccinated. Almost 85% have at least one shot. And I think you see the results in our numbers. We're doing the right thing here on Long Island. We're wearing our masks. We are keeping our distance, and we're keeping our numbers low. So at this point, I feel as though that what we've got to do for our workers, especially in the county, is, because I see them so closely, is to recognize that when we called folks essential workers during our pandemic shutdown, I believe we needed to remember that, because what we've seen is these folks are in fact essential to keep our lives running. So I think it's premature to mandate any kind of vaccines, and I'm very proud of what we've done as a community to keep our numbers low.
Thank you. Robert?
I would not mandate the vaccine, not at all. I don't think that's appropriate. Me being a county worker, I actually during the shutdown did not go home. I actually went to work every single day. Mandating us to do that is I don't think it's appropriate at all. Like Bridget said, everybody wears masks. The county itself is now, if you're an unvaccinated, you're supposed to wear a mask. I wear a mask everywhere I go. And for me personally, I would not put that mandate on anybody.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. And Robert, you'll be first with that one. In the 2020 year review message from Robert Calarco, presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature, he stressed the importance of diversity and inclusion in Suffolk County government. What has Suffolk County already done to promote diversity and inclusion, and what more can be done?
Diversity, I know in the police force, they have a certain that they hire. In my own perspective, I mean, I think we're all pretty equal anyway. I do believe that a job should be appropriate for the person, but including and giving people the right to, or the opportunity to get a job is also important. To do better in that, I guess, would be to start by educating people better too. Someone who is capable of doing a job. That's it for me.
Okay, Bridget?
Thank you. As a woman in public service and a lawyer who's a woman, I was an assistant district attorney for almost 10 years, sex crimes prosecutor, and also a fraud prosecutor. But I found that in all the work that I've done in public service, that there is no real substitute for life experience. And so diversity of all kinds in government is critical. It's just essential. We've seen in the Reform and Reinvention Task Force in law enforcement, one of the highlighted concerns is a lack of diversity in Suffolk County law enforcement. And that is without a doubt a challenge that we need to keep attacking. I'm the vice chair of the Public Safety Committee, so I help to support an effort by the district attorney, Tim Sini, to bring in a more diverse population in the ranks of the assistant DAs in that office. One of the things we did in order to achieve that was to waive residency requirements for incoming assistant DAs. And now they recruit from all over the country in order to ensure that we've got a population in the DA's office, the folks who have the power to exercise the district attorney's powers, are folks who have that affinity, who have that life experience, and are in fact diverse. We've seen, we have a bill that we're deciding on now that I firmly support, that would require that people of color are reached out to for commissioners positions, to ensure that that extra step is taken, because unless you take that extra step, you won't ever break those bonds of that create obstacles for folks to serve the county in diverse ways. So I'm a big proponent of diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Okay, Bridget, you're going to answer this question first. County Executive Steve Balloon is proposing a budget that uses the expected $18 million surplus to pay off debt, fill staff vacancies, and replenish reserve funds. Will you vote for the, or would you, Robert, for this budget, vote for this budget? Are there any parts of it that you feel will have the greatest impact? Any items you would have liked to change?
First of all, I want to say that our partners in Washington, D.C. are certainly to be credited for the enormous support that they gave us coming out of COVID. So $286 million in direct aid to counties is included under the American Rescue Plan. And those funds, as you mentioned, Kathy, are going to be critically important to really turn the corner for Suffolk County finances. So as you say, we will be paying down debt, critically important. I recently co-sponsored a resolution with Republican member Tom Silmy to ensure that the pension amortization that we had to enter into when times were very, very tough, that cost debt for us to cover our pension obligations, would be resolved, would be completely paid off within the budget. And those are exactly the kind of initiatives that we see in the budget to eliminate debt, that are going to change not only our ability to meet the needs of Suffolk County residents without burdening taxpayers. We can freeze property taxes and at the same time meet these needs if we reduce our debt service and if we increase our reserves. But not only will it have that great effect of just keeping the trains running, so to speak, but actually literally keeping the buses running, but it will also have the impact of improving our bond rating, which in the end means capital projects are far less costly for taxpayers. So that's fantastic. And I'm proud to have co-sponsored that. The other thing that I'm working hard on is, first of all, to ensure that transportation is properly supported. We have this terrific pilot, which is an on-demand microtransit pilot in an area of the county where we had a bus. I'm going to have to use some leftover time to finish that because I see the stop sign, but I would say transportation and also
wait. You have to stop now. You have to stop now. Sorry.
No
You can
worries.
come, you can circle back. You can
I
circle
will.
back
I
later.
will. Thank you.
Robert, you're up.
I have not read the actual bill, so I don't want to wish to comment on it. If so, yeah, so thank you. I don't really know or understand, so commenting on something like that, I wouldn't be able to do.
Okay.
May I use my rebuttal time just to finish? Okay,
You may
thank
have
you.
a minute. May have a minute.
Thank you. Well, as folks who followed the work of my team know, we've been very focused on public transportation. When we think about climate change, the fact that we're a coastal community, the increased impacts of climate change, one of the things that I believe we have to do is continue to invest in public transportation. Transportation can be expensive, especially if you're not running the system in a way that creates fair revenue that will support the system more than what we see. And our state and federal partners need to step up. But I would like to see funding in the budget, which is there in the Public Works department, be not earmarked, but certainly be available to support innovative approaches to public transportation, like the microtransit pilot that's underway in the Sag Harbor, Southampton area. The other big area is investing in coastal resiliency and flood mitigation, and to proactively look at what's happening on our coastlines and in high groundwater areas where we can proactively invest and limit the impacts of climate change.
Okay, the next question, Robert, you'll be first on this one. The county is in good financial shape, but not all its citizens or small businesses are. What would you do to help the people directly? Nassau County just cut real estate and traffic fees. Are there any fees in Suffolk County that you would recommend be reduced? Is there anything you can do to minimize our utility bills that are expected to increase 26% for gas heat, $20 for electricity? What would you do to help people directly?
I guess try to create jobs for people. Try to create jobs and try to get people to come out and actually want to do jobs. I know out in the East End this year, a lot of people in restaurants had a hard time finding one because of our traffic coming out here. Their employee level was down, and from COVID. So coming back from COVID, getting people back out and getting into jobs. Fees, I mean, the red light camera stuff out in the western end, I would kind of try to drop that, because that is it's hard on a lot of people. Around here, maybe reduce the Peconic tax on our when you're buying a house. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bridget?
Yes, great question. And I have supported, for instance, a reduction in the mortgage tax, the fee to file a mortgage. And so I do think that we should always look for ways to make it easier for ordinary folks in Suffolk County to meet their budgets, week in, week out, month in, month out. I would note that in ARPA and the American Rescue Plan funds that we've received, and in the county executive's proposed budget, something that I support is over $100 million for support for downtowns and economic development. So we saw in our communities that small businesses and small arts institutions and larger arts institutions were hit hard by the fact that they did not have the kind of revenue that they needed. Now, a lot of work was done at the national level to support these folks. And I think the PPP loans and other support certainly helped us move through that. But there were some who just didn't make it. It has been a brutally tough time for small businesses. So I'm pleased to see the county executive set aside $100 million for that kind of support for our small businesses. And I look forward to participating as a partner in ensuring that those funds are directly directed to small businesses that need that kind of support coming out of COVID. When we talk about fees for electricity, I'm so glad the questioner brought that up. I have advocated vociferously for a re-examination of the kind of derailing of the reconsideration of the PSEG-LIPA contract. Our electric fees are some of the highest in the United States. And that doesn't only impact businesses and families, but boy, it does. But it also means that we are not seeing the kind of innovative investment in renewable energy that we need to see. We need to keep fighting that.
Great. Bridget, you're going to be first on this next question. Since we are dependent on our water aquifers, how can you help to protect the water quality in Suffolk? Ban sand mines, restrict chemical use on lawns, gardens, and golf courses, mandate testing of home wells, require the Suffolk County Water Authority to provide water to all residents in Suffolk County? What can we do?
Well, there is just no question that water quality, both groundwater quality and the quality of our surface waters, our bays, rivers, and harbors is a critical component, not only of the character of our community, we are a marine community, but it also is the very engine that runs our economy. People think of Long Island as a place to always be oriented toward the water. And so we need to protect our surface waters in order to support those industries. But we also need to ensure that our groundwater is safe and clean and non-contaminated. So I have been on the forefront for many years of this fight. I am proud to have worked in Wainscott, in Gabreski, in Spionk, throughout the county, really, to monitor and detect the forever chemicals, perfluorinated compounds, PFAS and PFOA, and to ensure that the communities that are impacted have access to public water and have the funding that they need to extend public water mains so that they are not exposing their families to contaminated groundwater. That's a right. That's a human right that we have to support. We learned that in the past 5 or 6 years that nitrogen pollution is largely responsible for the loss of our shellfish, for the closing of our beaches, for the algae, the red tide and the mahogany tide, the brown tide that has had such an impact. We're seeing even the scallop harvest is threatened once again this year. There's no question that we need to take very, very seriously the threat to our surface waters. And we've learned that 90%, likely 90% of that nitrogen pollution comes from outdated wastewater technology. It's been one of the missions of my team to attack that. And I'd love to follow up on that when I have a little more time on the clock.
Robert, your turn. Are you muted, Robert?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Mine would be to
Go ahead.
Mine would be to make awareness of what people actually put into their septic systems and what they put into their groundwater, the nitrogens, like the different chemicals they use to clean their clothes. Our community is largely based on people going to the beach, using our waterways. I personally do a lot of paddle boarding, but making aware of what people are putting into the groundwater and testing what are in people's wells, especially in the Remsenburg area. I think just make more aware of what people, because a lot of people, they put a lot of different chemicals into the ground and they don't realize that it just goes straight into the aquifer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next,
Kathy, I'm sorry, may I use another one
Yes,
of
you
my
may.
minutes?
yes, you may.
Thank you. Just don't want to let this very important topic go by without a little further comment. I have been a leading member of the working group that set up the septic improvement program, which is part of the larger Reclaim Our Water initiative that is truly a legacy initiative for County Executive Balone. But the legislature and state and local local governments, villages and towns, and also folks within the health department in the administration have worked in this working group now since 2016, when I first came on the legislature, to set up a septic improvement program that is attacking the 360,000 failing septic systems on individual residences that, as I mentioned, are really threatening our water quality. We have now received over $40 million, or dedicated over $40 million in state and county funding to this incredibly important undertaking. And I'm proud to be a leading member of the working group.
Thank you. Okay, Robert, you're first on this question. This next question. Babylon just received $157 million in state and federal funds for the Carls River Sewer Project. For what projects are you or would you pursue state and federal funds? Not a sewer question, state and federal funds question.
State and federal funds question. I mean, sewer districts are good. It definitely pulls the water away from their aquifer. I know that West Hampton is putting in a sewer district. What Hampton Bays probably would be a good idea to put one there, because it's one of the largest densely populated areas in Southampton. Hard as federal money, I'm not too sure on that one, so I can't comment. Thank you.
Okay, Bridget?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of places in county government where the larger resources of state and federal funding would be critical, which already are critical. You mentioned the Carls River, but there's also the Patchogue River, the Carmens River, the Forge River, Oakdale, and Huntington Station as well. And all of those folks have now, in many of them, have approved at referendum the creation of taxing districts in order to receive state and federal funding in order to take those very large infrastructure projects forward and really save those impaired waters. So there's no question that that's a critically important way to expend federal and state dollars. But we have other infrastructure needs as well. I mean, certainly the transportation issue is a big one. We are underfunded by almost an order of magnitude relative to other communities when it comes to state and federal support for our public transportation system. We can't survive in public transportation without more of that level of support, and we can't turn our backs on the importance of getting out of our individual cars and reducing our fossil fuel emissions by having a public transportation system that works. On groundwater, we have a problem where we've discovered H1 dioxane, which is a product that's made by cleaning products that is very, very challenging to remediate. It takes this very expensive oxidation systems that we need to ensure that we have, and that could also come from state and federal funding. And the big one, in my view, at this point, that I'm fighting hard for and hoping to get somewhere on in the upcoming year, is coastal resiliency. The Army Corps of Engineers is charged with protecting and defending our coastline. And we are seeing, I don't know if you've seen in the news, but in Cupsog at Shinnecock East, we're losing big chunks of our infrastructure in our parks. We need the Army Corps funding to help shore up our coastline in light of climate change.
The next question, you'll be first, Bridget. The town of East Hampton might opt to close East Hampton Airport to commercial air traffic and allow only smaller private aircraft. If this happens, there's a chance we'll see a considerable increase in traffic at the other local airports and the subsequent land traffic. How would you mitigate that increase in traffic when the whole South Fork is already suffering from crowded roads? Manhattan is discussing congestion pricing. Would you favor congestion pricing for peak travel on County Road 39, and how would you implement it?
I have to say, with regard to the question of the airport, I'd like to just address that first, if I may, since that's there in the question and a big one. We've seen increased air traffic since the pandemic hit for a couple of reasons. More people are using air traffic, for one, and then secondly, more people are resident in their homes more frequently. And so that combination is at, for instance, Gabreski Airport, which is a county facility, leading to a lot of challenges for individuals in the community. So I formed a task force to allow the community to work with the administrators of the airport in order to find ways to mitigate the impacts of that sound. And I'm very pleased that we've got stakeholders from all groups who are impacted, who are now meeting quarterly in order to form a report that'll offer some solutions. With regard to the East Hampton Airport, I do think it's important to mention, first of all, just from the perspective of good government, there was really something to be said for thoughtful, experienced approach to government. And I have to say, East Hampton town government composed a scheme, a strategy to mitigate the impact of noise from the airport, which was really thoughtful and robust, and the FAA shot it down. But now they've declined the FAA assurances. They can go back to that very thoughtful way of not necessarily shutting the airport, but figuring out a way how to go back to their careful scheme, which classified aircraft according to noise levels and then set regulations according to the aircraft characterization. It was just brilliant. It'll be good when they go back to it.
Thank you, Robert.
Closing down the East Hampton Airport itself, and moving all flights to moving the larger flights to Gabreski, it's going to cause the same amount of anguish that East Hampton is having right now. There's actually people in West Hampton. There was an article a couple of weeks ago who were complaining that the noise level there was getting too much. And then the traffic going out east in the morning is horrible as well. Even coming back home is horrible. So shutting it down or limiting it, I don't think it's a good idea. They have a lot of those people on those planes have rights to go in and out of there. They live there too. I mean, it's loud. I can hear it from Wolfer Estates most days when I'm working there. And I think for the traffic going back in, it would be to get from West Hampton to East Hampton with more traffic. It would just be not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go back on that question a little bit, because we talked a lot about the airports, but we didn't talk about traffic congestion. So I'm going to ask again about ways to mitigate the increase in car traffic on the South Fork. Do you think congestion pricing is an answer on Route 39? And Robert, you're first.
I don't think congestion pricing is a good thing. I don't think because of people traveling out there, you should charge them extra. I think if there are shuttles, maybe you can do a boat service from another area that would go around all that. Would be a better idea. But impeding or having extra taxes or costs to travel that road during peak times I don't think that's not appropriate.
Okay,
Thank
Bridget. Bridget?
Yeah, well, clearly traffic is one of our most pressing problems. And I think there are a number of ways that I've worked on myself actually to reduce traffic. One of the things is, and it's consistent with climate change mitigation, is you got to get people out of their individual cars. You have to offer folks a reliable cost-effective public transportation system. And I'm fully in support of the South Fork commuter connection, which I think is terrific. We just launched it again just a month or so ago after COVID, but that is a perfect way of letting people know. If you sit on your car in County Road 39, you can see the billboard that says if you were on the train, you'd be at work by now, which is a terrific solution. I work so hard on public transportation in the area of the buses for that reason as well. And we're really delighted at the success of the microtransit on demand pilot that's happening in Southampton, Sag Harbor. We need to ensure that we have the funding to support it. The traffic configuration is challenging as well, but we got to continue to look for ways to mitigate traffic jams. We're very limited because we have these two east-west arteries, and I think there's very little we can do, but I've worked on a couple of things there. First of all, well, in particular, because I want to get back to the congestion pricing, but in Hampton Bays, a recent development just east of the canal caused a new configuration of traffic there that has really jammed up traffic in the morning and the evening. So I secured $250,000 for the beginning of a planning process to look at a traffic circle or other kind of mitigation at that location. In terms of congestion pricing, I don't want to avoid your question, Kathy. I need to spend more time looking at it, but I do know that there's been some headaches in New York City. We need the infrastructure to support it. And so I'd want to do some more research.
Bridget, you're first on this next question. The issue of police reform has been all over the news. Rallying cries to defund the police are popular, but at the same time, there's been an increase in violent crimes on our streets. What can you do to protect our citizens from crime and still increase the sensitivities of our police departments?
I'm glad you asked the question, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there is some misinformation there. We have seen a decrease in violent crimes, a decrease in property crimes. In both of those areas of law enforcement, we are in better shape by far than we were a year ago. And that's a trend that continues. One thing that we have seen is that gun violence has increased, and we need to attack that separately and, get to the source. We're seeing, I'm, as I said, the vice chair of the Public Safety Committee. We had the chief of police, who is the acting commissioner, come and report to us about this just 2 weeks ago. So those numbers are fresh off the table. There's 7% decline in violent crimes and an even greater decline in property crimes. But with regard to guns, we're seeing out-of-state illegal guns, coming from states that have less stringent laws around guns. Those are coming in, and ghost guns. Unfortunately, the guns that are made 3D on the computer are, from the internet, are increasingly impacting our communities. So in fact, our community is safer. Our communities are safer than they've been in many, many years with regard to the violent crime and property crime. We are seeing an increase in guns that we have to take very seriously. I think I lost track of the very beginning of your question. Was it how to get to crime?
It was a balance between crime and sensitivity.
Oh, I'd love to talk about the reforms too, but I think we've made great progress on the reforms. Body worn cameras is a huge thing. Mental health responses to mental health incidents, as opposed to just going right to the police response. And
thank you, Bridget. Robert? Robert.
Hello. I would not defund the police. I think the police are a huge part of our community. I think they do a great job on a daily basis. There's a lot of things that they do that most of the population does not see. And trying to tell them how to do their job, I would not defund the police or try to tell them what they should be doing, because I think they're doing a really good job on their own. Thank you.
Great. Robert, you're first on the next question, and I'm going to back. You started discussing this a little, and so I'm going to do a follow-up question. On one hand, there's help wanted signs in every window, and on the other hand, the exodus of young people from our area continues. How can the Suffolk County Legislature help grow the economy and create good jobs? How would you promote or build a talent pipeline for Suffolk?
I mean, it's getting the awareness of getting out there. I think that a lot of people, because of COVID times, have been sitting on the unemployment check. And when it first came out, it was you were making more money sitting home than you were to go out and work. So, I mean, maybe reducing the employment or maybe making incentives to get out to actually vote by maybe reducing some of the taxes that the county or the state or the federal government actually puts on people so they can get more money in their pocket. But it is a problem. And I've seen it a lot this year with restaurants, especially out-eat restaurants. Thank you.
Thank you. Bridget?
Well, we're definitely seeing a transition in the job market without a doubt. And there's some good to that and there's some bad to that for sure. But we're seeing in the service industry, very challenging for employers to find employees, and adjustments have to be made to make that work. We do have this money that's now been set aside in the operating budget. I expect to pass, I certainly will support it myself, over $100 million to invest in downtowns, in job creators, in small businesses. Super important. We need to support our friends and allies in organized labor who have apprenticeship programs and other opportunities to build job creation. We used to be a manufacturing economy here on Long Island, and there are opportunities there now, certainly in the renewable energy sector. We are seeing, for instance, our offshore wind projects are going to be producers of considerable job creation. Our allies in organized labor have ensured that there's a project labor agreement so that you'll have organized labor at the table as those jobs are being created. And so that means they're good jobs. They're good jobs that have safe working conditions and good wages and a secure future. Those are the kind of jobs that are going to get young people to stay on Long Island. And then we need to support them with affordable housing that's accessible, and young families can get into a house. We need transportation that satisfies young folks. We see downtowns like Patchogue being extremely successful in drawing young people. We need to continue to look at ways to build job sectors around those centers. So the arts are very important, education is very important, and clearly working on good jobs. There may be opportunities in renewable energy manufacturing.
Thank you. Bridget, you're first on the next one, and you led right into it. What's your position on wind power off the Suffolk County shores?
We have more than 90% of our energy being produced by fossil fuel resources here on Long Island. We're not getting it right. And it's one of the reasons why I have fought to ensure that the LIPA-PSEG relationship will be revisited in light of the terrible failures after Tropical Storm Isaias. That's an opportunity for us to look at how our energy is being produced, not only to reduce rates, not only to increase reliability, although those two goals are extremely important. What we really need to do is increase the renewable energy component of our energy portfolio, and wind has to be an important part of that. But there are other things to do as well. We are doing very poorly on mid to large scale solar here on Long Island. And I helped the Nature Conservancy build a multi-layer map that would help drive innovative investment in solar energy here on Long Island. But for some reason, we have been unable to animate that sector of innovation. And as a coastal community, it doesn't make sense. As I mentioned before, with a PLA in place, those ocean turbines also offer the opportunity to create good, lasting jobs. Two things we have to be very, very mindful of. We need to be smart and thoughtful and open-minded about impacts on neighbors and make sure that the Ørsted and other developers' feet are held to the fire to reduce impacts on neighbors, and hugely important impacts on the fisheries that so many families on Long Island rely on, and that brings great food to the tables across the state. Wind is great, and it needs to be thoughtfully implemented.
Robert? You're muted again. You're muted.
My apologies.
That's okay.
I like the wind idea. I think it might be a little bit of an eyesore out in the middle of the ocean. The wind turbines themselves have, I believe, to have a double kind of negative side to them. They've stopped the flow of actual airflow and actually raises the temperature in the surrounding area. I do like the idea of them. I think also we could implement there's a different turbines that you can use to have, where it works off of the actual wave heights. It's a buoy that turns the turbine underneath. But in either way, it still would affect the fishing industry that's out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is going to be the last question. And Robert, you're first. We've covered a lot of topics. What do you think is the most pressing issue in the 2nd District of Suffolk County? And what are your plans to deal with it?
I guess actually the job market, and also the traffic that goes out east for us. The job market was just being able to get out and get people to understand or not to understand, but to get them out to produce jobs, to get out and actually go to work. And then the traffic, I think it's definitely the commuter train, trying to create maybe a boat ride that bypasses a lot, like a ferry system. Thank you.
Thank you. Bridget?
Yeah, thank you for the question. In my years in office, I've certainly had the privilege and the opportunity to understand the myriad challenges that face Suffolk County. So you hate to boil it down to just one thing, but if you're asking me for one thing, I have to say it's climate change and its impact. So we're seeing now sunny day flooding. So you don't even need a rain event, you just need a full moon, and the water has nowhere to go. We've seen recently up in New York City. It was fatal. In fact, I think 8 people died in their basements because of these extreme weather events that are coming out of nowhere. Superstorm Ida was certainly one, or I guess it was a tropical depression, they changed it to in the end, but hurricanes are certainly an issue for us. But if we are going to continue to see these extreme weather events, I mean, even the National Weather Service was taken by surprise with the flooding that happened after Ida. And we see it in Europe, and we see it in Kentucky, and we see it in Washington State. We can't kid ourselves. As a coastal community, we're Long Island, we need to know that we're on the very front lines of the climate change battle. And so we need to, first of all, review our vulnerabilities. We need to look, for instance, I mentioned Cupsog Park. We lost many campgrounds and a big chunk of the road because the bay, the Shinnecock Bay, it's the Great South Bay, hit the north side of that peninsula and ate part of it. And we saw that also this year as well at Shinnecock East, where a whole portion of the road fell into the Shinnecock Bay. So these are very serious impacts that we need to, first of all, recognize the public safety issues. That's very big, but then also the cost to the taxpayers of losing those important assets.
Thank you. We're going to go to closing statements now, and you each have 1 minute for closing. Bridget, you're first.
So how do we do the sign for the close, you just show me 30 seconds and then that's,
Yeah. She'll do a 30-second and a stop.
okay, very good. Well, thank you. And thank you for this very important forum. We really do need to make sure that voters are educated as to what their public officials are doing, what each of us who's competing for a seat at the table brings to that discussion. And so your League of Women Voters amplifying that is just so important. These challenging times call for experienced and thoughtful leadership. We need steady hands on the wheel to get us through the pandemic, keep the economy on track, invest in renewable energy and good jobs to grow prosperity. We need to keep our communities safe and healthy, protect against climate change impacts without increasing taxes. I'm committed to work hard to move our communities forward as I have done in the past, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert?
So my name is Robert Carpenter. I'm running for the 2nd Legislature. I'll be on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank both candidates for their informative and thought-provoking responses. And I'd like to thank all of those viewing this debate as well. A big thank you to Charles Certain and CTV. And most importantly, don't forget to vote. You may vote at your usual voting site on Election Day, November 2nd, or at an early voting site from October 23rd through the 31st. And log in to Vote 411. It's a place where you can learn more about these and other candidates and the propositions that will be on the ballot. Thank you for joining us tonight. Go vote.